Da-da. Hello, my friend. It is so awesome to see you, and welcome to the Back to Me podcast. And this is where we talk about wellness your way, and it can happen any way that it works for you, right? And today, I see you nodding your head already. My friend, the amazing and wonderful Janine Kathleen Shapiro. And I don't think I ever knew what your last name was because I just call you Janine Kathleen.
Most people don't, and that's okay.
And that's okay. It works. It's the Janine Kathleen show. And for people who missed it, I was on your podcast and I was so excited to talk to you. I said, you have to come and talk to my listeners over here because when I was on your show, it was all about me, but I want to know more all about you. So welcome, my friend. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me and having me. And it was such a gift having you. And we had so much to chat about that I invited Heather back again. So yes, and even before this, we could just chat for hours.
Yes, we did. We did end up just talking and talking. Even before we came on, we were talking away. I said, well, we should probably record a podcast. Right.
Could be a good idea.
So the first thing I always ask people, and I don't think I had this conversation with you, was, so you're a personal leadership coach and psychic healing, pretty much in a nutshell. And how did you get into this? Like what road brought you down into Janine Kathleen as you are today?
Sure. How long have we got? No, in a nutshell, I always felt like I was missing something, that there was something just beyond my reach. And it was like quite confusing. And yet I would have a sense of, I would actually get into trouble because I would have a knowingness about people and I would just blurt it out and it wouldn't be appropriate, because not everybody would like you to know about things. And because of the time I grew up in, being psychic and that sort of thing was really unrecognized. And when I look back on it, my mom also had a similar gift because she would start talking about things as well, and people would think that she had insider knowledge. Meanwhile, she was just talking about what was in her heart, and it would make life interesting. So what happened was my husband and I were part of a network marketing company, and well, even before that, I was involved. Let's start at the beginning, Janine. Went into nursing and I just found the hours too much. I just found it very stressful. And I was unaware of my giftings at that time. I just know I was drawn to help people. And I would know when somebody was going to transition. And so they started calling me the sister of death in the medical wards. And I just didn't know how I knew these things. Or I'd have a knowingness that what if the doctors are saying this is wrong? No, that's what's wrong. And at that time, they were not very open to insights from other people. And I left nursing after I did my midwifery and my psychiatry and my general nursing because I was just too exhausted from it. I had developed something that later became called hypoglycemia. I would pass out while I was driving. What I was unaware of is I was feeding. Yes, I know. It got very bad once I'd had children. I didn't drive for quite a few years because my son learned to handle the steering wheel at a very early age, which in its own is another story for another day. I was unaware of the fact that I was sending out energy and healing energy to people. I was unaware of the fact that I was taking on energies. I just knew I got tired, I got sick, I didn't feel good. And when I had done 17 straight 12-hour shifts, I I couldn't. My body just couldn't at that point. And that was all at night. So, and I don't sleep during the day. At that point, I didn't sleep well during the day. So anyway, to cut a very long story short,
You
number
must have
one,
been hallucinating. Like, how can you
it
stay?
was it was rough. It was rough,
Right?
and I know there are quite a few people that do it now, and I really admire them. I just could. It's not in my scope of practice. I then found out afterwards that in the human design, I'm a projector, so I definitely shouldn't be doing it. You as well, yeah,
Yes. Which is
yeah.
why you do things too, and why nobody wanted to hear it.
Yes, yeah, and that's why nobody wished to hear it, because they hadn't asked for it. Because for those who don't know, when you're a projector, you get to wait to share things, you get invited to share things, and when you share them uninvited, it's intrusive, and people puts their backles up so badly, and they're just unavailable to hear it. So anyway, my husband and I had a chat, and I came home and I started doing antenatal education at home, which led to doing baby massage, which led to massage, which led to me being interested in this company's nutrition for my practice, and everything just evolved, and it was just all part of the journey. And it was fascinating because I had very little energy, because I was doing what other people expected you to do. And I was actually living my husband's dream, because he loves wellness, he loves nutrition, and he loves that sort of thing. And I had taken that on. And I was actually living his dream. And simultaneously, I was feeding people healing energy. So, you're going to crash and burn at some point in time when you're doing this.
Right.
So anyway, to cut a very long story short, and lots of frustrations and learnings, my dad passed away from a spider bite. Well, let's put it in perspective. He was a diabetic with cardiac complications, and when the spider bit him, it just was when he chose to transition. And I came to understand that my clinic was really unavailable to support my children and myself. It was more of a hobby than a business at that point in time. And so I went online to take my business online, to expand it and grow it. And there I met people who did what I did. When they touched people, they felt better. When to give an example, before I even knew about it, we were on a cycling tour. My husband and I raced tandem as well as singles bicycles. And I just said to somebody, do this, touch here, the grooves here, and her sinus will get better. And she must just look into the sun at sunrise for a specific amount of time. And I heard about 3 years later, after you told this lady to do this, she's never had sinus again. And I went, oh, that's nice. And I never really thought about it. And people would ask me, Janine, please just touch me. I always feel so much better afterwards. And the frustration for me before my dad passing was, I would say to people, you know what? This and this and this is what the challenge is with you. Because I would look at the causes rather than the symptoms. I would take the symptoms and I would just have a knowingness of what the causes were. And because I wasn't charging them, or I was charging them the equivalent of about $2 at that point in time, people didn't believe me. And then they go to their medical professional, they come and say, oh, do you know, by the way, you were quite correct. And the day I drew a line in the sand, Heather, was when this woman came to me about her daughter. And I said, well, this is what your daughter's challenge is, and this is what is required. And she left. And afterwards, about 5 years later, she met me. She said, oh, do you know, we went to the USA and we went to England and we paid a fortune of money. And surprise, surprise, they said exactly what you told us for free. And that was when I drew a line in the sand and I said, this is nonsense. So when I went online to go back to it, just to share some of the frustrations, people, anything else, and what I learned from it was to value myself, because until we value ourselves, no one else is going to really value us as much as we can. And the bottom line is, when I went online, I started discovering, oh, you mean that I'm not nutty. Other people can hear what people are saying, and other people understand these things. And I started working with what I call spiritual gifts, my psychic gifts. I also came to understand that I have a deep gift for leadership and for language. And when I listen to people, it helps me read their energy because I can hear what's happening in their life from their language. I can also understand what's going to keep happening in their life because of their language. And when I started cleaning up my language, it was amazing what started happening, how my husband got to own his dream and I was able to own my dream. I was able to give his dream back to him and take my dream on board because, as you know, as a projector, we see the future, we see the systems, and we see the places people can go to. And with my gift of understanding language and bringing into harmony, I understood that I could hear when people were out of harmony in their body as well as feel it. It was a very, and let me tell you, when we had all that stuff happening in 2020, when there were no cars going, nothing happening, and there was silence, I suddenly discovered that what I'd been hearing all these years and saying, but surely you can hear this since they built the extension on the factory down the road. That no, other people can't hear the EMFs. Other people cannot hear those frequencies. So how I got here was going online and starting to own who I am and what my gifts are. And that has been the journey. And yes, I'm sure it's going to change again. And right now we call it personal leadership coaching and psychic healing because that basically encompasses so much of what I help people to resolve, to do, and to move forward with.
Amazing. So that was like an amazing journey. And it's like you were always led into like this helping. And I can't remember. There is a podcast with a human design person, but yes, it's out. So if people are like, "What's human design?" Go back and listen to that. But it is challenging when you know the answer. It's like you can, and
Yes.
probably everybody's had some degree of it where you're like, I can see what's going on. I just want to help you, but they're not in that space to hear you. And I was listening to a woman today, Elizabeth. It's EA. She goes up in channels and does she transitions back and forth in like doing what's that called? When you go somewhere else and look around?
Oh, yeah, she does astral traveling.
Yes. Thank you. And she was talking about she had asked a question at one point and they didn't answer her. And she asked it again 5 years later and they did answer her. And she said, they can't tell you what you're not ready to hear.
Yes.
So do you find that there's a way to help people? Like, first of all, I love that you mentioned that you valued yourself because that is huge. That's a huge part of coaching, right? It's to teach people to value themselves. And for people who aren't ready to step into their fullness, what do you use? I call myself a lighthouse. What do you use to light the way for those people? Is there something that you find helps them realize before they're fully ready?
Yeah. What I've come to understand is very often we have to clear the layers before we can rebuild before we can redig the foundations. Sometimes you have to take the house down and apart so that you can get to the foundations because it's no good building a skyscraper on a bungalow foundation. Something is going to crash and it's normally the skyscraper.
Right.
And so to me, it's to help people again with their language to understand, listen to the narrative you are telling yourself. Can you see what you are building? And what really, really helps is to ask people, where would you like to go? What would you like to have? Because very often when you can get them to focus on where they're going As things come up to be cleared, they are more open to it because I've got on my cell phone, what is my highest choice now? It helps them understand what is their highest choice now. Is it to go back and live in the past? Or is it just to observe the past, use the experience to have experience to move forward in order to create a different experience and to be open to the possibilities, the potentials, and the probabilities. And I learned this from channeling, because when you channel, it's very dependent on other people's decisions, worldwide things. So I can channel something for you now, and in 2 days' time, it could have shifted and changed, because we all have a myriad of pathways. So when people can choose a pathway, it helps them to understand what they're getting to unbundle, what they're getting to release, and what they're getting ready to let go of. It also helps them to understand that, guess what? We get to work with the universal energies. We get to work with the different pathways. And this empowers them to understand, well, if I'm going to keep saying I can't, then you jolly well or won't. Whereas when you choose to say, yes, I was abused, or I had this happen, or I had this trauma, or I had this accident, where can I use it as a strength rather than as a stumbling block? People are more open to moving forward. And Heather, as you know, I am passionate, really passionate about telling people to stay in their comfort zone and to stretch their boundaries. So we stretch our comfort zone boundaries, and we stretch our comfort zone because when you step out of your comfort zone, especially women, you feel unsafe and you run back way beyond where you started.
Right.
Whereas when we help people to take small, tiny steps, a quantum leap, I loved how somebody described it. It's the smallest expenditure of energy for the hugest results. And when we help people take those small steps of adding something rather than taking something away, it helps to dissolve what is no longer required rather than leaving them with a sense of loss. So I help people to reshape their identity one step at a time by focusing on, well, who is my future self? Would she like to be 60 kilos? Would she like to be well? What would she like to be? What am I choosing her to be now? And then what is my highest and wisest choice right now in order to become that future self? And when we sit down and we say, okay, future self, what decision would you have taken at this moment in time in order to be at that point? It empowers people to, rather than hanging on to be safe in their discomfort, to feel safe and to stretch into a little bit of discomfort rather than an overwhelm that destroys them. Does that answer your question?
Probably. I can't remember what it was, but I loved listening to what you were saying.
The question was, how do I help people move beyond?
That's perfect. And it's interesting because when you were talking, it's a very masculine energy to get outside your comfort zone and conquer it, and it doesn't work for a lot of people because you've said, and you've seen it, I'm sure I've seen it. It's like people step out and they go, no, 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 that's too far. I'm running back. And when you were talking about building the skyscraper, and you're trying to build it on the wrong foundation, a lot of people, when they imagine you're going to tear everything down, that's like death. I can't kill everything and become something new. So they just don't, right? It's too frightening to imagine all of that all of the life that you've gotten used to completely gone.
Yeah. And that is one of the biggest traumas for people, is when everything is ripped apart. It takes much longer to come back together because of that lack of safety. Whereas when you can create safety, when things do get ripped apart, they feel safe enough and they have enough resilience. And that is one of the primary things of my personal leadership coaching, is to help people build that resilience so that they can, step by step, oh, I managed to do it then. This is new, and because I coped back then, I can cope with this now. Because I was able to stretch then, I can stretch a little bit more now. And by building resilience within their spiritual life, their physical life, within their wellness, within their mindset, they are able to then deal with it. And that is one of the reasons language is so incredibly important, because we spell when we speak. And people, I'm not talking woo-woo magic, I'm talking energy, frequency, and harmony here. You can, when you keep repeating the same story, you're going to keep living that story, because that's what you're programming and imprinting yourself. Whereas when you choose to have the insight of, oh, look at that. If I keep saying my feet are killing me, guess what? Your feet are going to get very sore and you're going to trip over, break your neck, and be dead. Very graphic example. And
It is.
and yet it's the truth. How many times have you heard people say, I saw a beautiful one on Instagram the other day. This is physically breaking my heart. And I went, you know what? I will be very, very unsurprised to hear this person's dead of a heart attack in later years, or quite soon. Because if you keep talking about that, it's going to happen. You're programming yourself. And just to go back to something, one of the biggest things I've experienced, and I'm sure you have as well, is to be aware of our programming when we were young, and to be aware that it's okay to move beyond our parents' greatest achievements. Because so many times I find this is one of people's largest stumbling blocks at a deep, deep unconscious level, because they are tapping into that wounded energetic capacity, whether it's wounded masculine or wounded feminine, because we are not meant to compete, to compare, to criticize, to condemn, and to complain. We are created to work within love, work within expansion, and work with creativity. And we get to create no matter what we're doing. You could either create a disaster and a mess, or you can create a miracle and magic and expansion and step into possibilities. Is it scary? Oh, absolutely. I'm sure you experienced that when you were in that emergency room.
Oh, right. Yes. But, and I'm so happy, because I wanted to talk about language, and then you just went there, right? It's like, she knows what I want.
I must be psychic. Imagine
You must be psychic. But it is true that people don't pay attention. Like, I started a while ago, I can't tell you when it occurred to me, unfortunately, to say, wow, if I keep saying that, I'm making that so, right? Like, I've stopped saying, oh, you're so funny, you kill me. No, I've stopped saying that because I don't want, I'm not quite ready to transition yet. And I have these clients, and it's true that things that you don't question, because they've been so long in your life that you haven't thought to question it. I have a client who, from the age of 2, she was indoctrinated into a certain religion. And now she's recognizing that it doesn't serve her.
Yeah.
But it's such a struggle to untangle who you are from, you could call them the gifts that people have given you, the things that people have given you. So, I mean, sometimes my question is, do you think you were born like that?
That is an amazing question, because many times the way we are comes from when our parents were in their mother's womb.
Back a generation?
Back a generation.
Wow.
Because the nutrition is impacted, the emotional being of the grandparent impacts that fetus, which impacts either the sperm or the ovaries, although sperm's produced continuously, whereas the ovaries are more preset. It sets an energetic vibrational energy. And this has been shown from survivors of any form of Holocaust, whether it was in World War II, or whether it was one of the more current events with when there have been Holocausts going on I'm thinking of the I don't want it happened in Africa, Rundi and not Rundi. I can't think of the name of it, but there have been many, many things. And you know what? It can even be as simple as being in an area where there's a lot of stress or a lot of tension. It doesn't even have to be as extreme as a wartime situation. It can just be where somebody's fearful of losing their work. It can be that somebody has had a fear from their parents. So yes, it does it goes 1 to 2 generations back, and it impacts us, and it's releasing that energetically. That is so important.
Right. And often we're not aware of why we react to certain things certain ways. I feel like either somewhere in my ancestral 3D life or somewhere in my ancestral other lives, I have a thing about basements. Don't know what it is, but I have a thing about basements. Maybe that's why I don't like spiders. But it's just like, where do these things come from? I was born with that one, apparently, but using our words, we can cast a new spell.
Yes.
For my, friends who cast spells, you can, even if you don't cast spells, I think
we all cast spells, and that is the challenge.
Right.
I
was so interesting. I was listening to, I don't know, do you know Riz Mirza?
No, I don't.
He's a channeler. He's almost like a rock star channeler. And he was on Gaia TV, and he was channeling one of his people that he channels is Red Eagle, I think his name is. He's a Native American. And he said, words are important. Pay attention to your words. He says, you think you're alone. He said, you've screwed up that word. He says, it's all one. But you've gone into fear and you've made it alone instead of all one. And he said, the word scared, you screwed it up. It's sacred. It's not scared. It's sacred. And then he said, silent. He said, silent, use the same letters, you get listen.
Yeah.
I thought, whoa, he's casting spells right now. Right. So I guess your first step, I always think practicality is part of my brain is very practical, is, be aware of what you say and what you're saying. And if you keep saying the same thing over and over, it is your truth, right? So go look for red cars. You'll see red cars,
Yes.
And then you have to make a decision to change it.
Okay, let's reframe that. It's not that we have to make a decision, because the minute we have to do something, there's extreme resistance. We get to make a decision. We choose to make it, or we're in the process of making it. Because the minute we have to, we go back to when we were in school and being forced to do something. And I don't know about you, I dislike being forced.
One of the lines of my youth apparently is, you're not the boss of me. My mom still accuses me of being the most stubborn child. And whenever she wanted me to do something, for a little while, she would tell me the opposite, because I would always do the opposite of what she said. But then I figured that out, and then she could never get me anything.
I love it. I love it. And there you see, that's programming as well. That's what we were talking about, the programming and the way we get moved around with various things. So it's fascinating to me. I was listening to something by, not Robert Schuller, I thought of the dude's name today, Norman Vincent Peale.
Oh, yes.
And I was listening to the programming that came through in that book about not, don't. And we tend to go to the negative rather than the positive. So I have been in the process of looking at, instead of saying, don't do that, saying, could you please do this? Or I won't do that, rather saying, well, I would love to do this, or I get to do this. And looking at what it is I desire rather than what I dislike. And when you pivot that, Heather, wow, what an unbelievable difference in our energy, our life. There's an expansion in it. There's so many examples popping into my brain that I've got to choose one to vocalize.
I use that for when I have to wash the dishes.
Yes, I get
because housework has never really been my favorite thing to do. And because my wonderful husband does all the cooking, I get to do the cleanup after the wonderful meal.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. For me, I just say, oh, I love having a clean, sparkling house. The energy flows and it will translate into cash flow in my bank account. And then all of a sudden the broom and the cleaning cloths come out, because guess what? I enjoy having this abundance and prosperity flow to me. And if it requires just wielding a broom, that's okay.
Right? You're not going to ride it. It's not that kind of broom.
Yes. We just sweep out the bad, the lower vibrational energy. We help it out the door, and we invite in the higher vibrational energy.
That's very feng shui, very, that Zen, your space you create the energy in your space that you want to bring in.
Yes.
And it's interesting. A lot of people don't contemplate how many layers there are to shifting that you can use to shift your vibration. If you're feeling like you're in a low vibration, you can use your language to change your mindset. You can to get rid of the dust bunnies to under the bed, all of those things.
Just even to tidy up our desk.
As I told you how messy my desk was before we came on.
No, I wasn't actually thinking about that. I was looking at mine and I realized I tidied it up before we came on here, because I really, really was looking to have a great energy for your audience. And one of the affirmations that I loved from Louise Hay is, I release all drama from my life and get energy from peace. And that is one of the affirmations that helps me, because clutter is drama. Clutter brings drama. It brings drama in our mind, in our language, and in our life. So when we declutter, and that includes the dust bunnies and the spiders that like to sit in the corner, we assist them to stay alive outside.
Yes, I do assist them to stay alive outside, or I ask someone else to assist them. The biggest spider I ever saw was in India, and I had to get someone to assist him out of the latrine because I couldn't go in.
Yes. May I share a story totally off the topic, and you're part of the topic. The one day I was speaking to someone, and all of a sudden you hear, and let me put it in perspective. They live in South Africa on a game reserve, and they have elephants keeping them in their home. Sometimes they can't get out to go to work. And I said, well, did you really wish to go to work that day? And you invited the elephants. But anyway, we heard this almighty scream. And the next thing, this lady flew out of the bathroom. A snake had come up through the sewage behind her on the loo. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, was that a message for me or was that a message for them? Because so many times we have signs in life. And luckily it was a non-lethal snake.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, it was a non-lethal, well, because, but it really, I don't know that I would have been so happy to lose that. So anyway, energetically, the point was they got to clear their space. And sometimes energetically, we have snakes coming up through the surge of the story we're telling ourselves as we are releasing things. And it's to release the snakes back into the wild and put things in place that we release what's in the surge as well. I actually used that analogy with somebody the other day. You can carry on playing at the surge farm, or you can go and find a lovely, delicious strawberry farm to go and play in. And that's what happens with us. Our thoughts and our words can keep us stuck in the surge where we have the chance of snakes coming up, or we can go to the strawberry field and feast if you like strawberries. I know there are people allergic to them, but go and find something that's a chocolate factory or whatever.
A chocolate farm.
Chocolate farm, yes. So anyway, I'm not sure where that came from, but whoever it was meant for, enjoy it.
Yes, it's for you, everyone. And I remember we had a conversation one day about your acronym. Look, I still have it written down on this Post-it note near my desk. Your acronym for fear. For people who are afraid to change something.
Yeah, I can't even remember because I've changed it since then. Can you read it out? And
the one that I have written that I keep next to my desk is feel it.
That's right.
Express it, allow it, and release it.
Yes, that's right.
So yeah. more powerful than false expectations appearing real, because then you're just telling people, oh, don't be so silly.
You're actually negating an emotion. And the minute you negate an emotion or something that's there and suppress it, it's literally going to come bubbling up at the wrong time. So feel it, experience it, acknowledge it, and release it allows you to say, you know what, it's okay to have this, because fear is showing me that I'm on the correct path. So it's like a nagging child. When you acknowledge that fear, when you acknowledge that emotion, when you acknowledge that maybe your language is a little bit off alignment or out of harmony with that future self, and you explore it, you experience it, you understand it. And even if you don't understand it, just say, where am I being asked to change? What am I being asked to change? And just acknowledge it. Thank you for coming forward. I am so grateful you're showing me this is where I can shift and change my energy, and you release it and replace it with love, with peace, with joy. And people, it takes time to get into those things. I know sometimes when I was beginning, it could take me a whole 2 hours to get into joy and peace. Now I can do it like this. I go 3, 2, 1, change, 3, 2, 1, change, 3, 2, 1, change. And I'm empowered to shift my energy. So, yes.
Oh, I remember
Thank you for that reminder, Heather. That was amazing.
Well, I keep it here and it reminds me of you all the time. And it's so interesting. Because that 3, 2, 1 change, I was listening to someone and they've left my head, but their measure was, if you are, it was the 15-minute rule. If you're upset, or was it the 5 or 15? Or if you're upset for something.
No.
Could be.
So finish.
If you're upset for something about something for longer than 15 minutes, it's not the thing that made you upset. It's something tangled in your energy past. And
Esther Hicks speaks about that. The people from Access Consciousness speak about that, and it's the truth. And in fact, you have 15 seconds to shift an emotion, because you can shift it in 15 seconds. After 15 seconds, you have chosen to invite it into play. And when you choose to invite it into play, it can either bring distraction or creation your way. And it's up to us to then say, I'm unavailable to play with you any longer. I have something that is calling me elsewhere. So thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here. And I've been in, our time is done, and now I'm to move forward with something else. And that's where that fear acronym came from as well. Because when you acknowledge it and let it go, wow, it's so powerful what can come forward.
Right? That's amazing.
Acronym, not an acronym, acronym.
The fear, yeah. I might have been Esther. It might have been Abraham and Esther and Abraham that I was listening to when I heard it, because I tend to listen to a lot of things, as you know.
Yes, me too. And someone said, "Where did you hear that?" And I go,
I actually saw Abraham live in June
Oh,
in Denver. Yes.
oh,
It
I'm
was,
so glad for you.
it was
Oh,
so
that's
good.
awesome. It's on my bucket list. It's in my future self.
My future self is going to go on a cruise with Abraham.
Yes, mine too. Maybe we can go on the same one.
I think that would be amazing. That
Me
would be
too.
amazing. So good.
Yeah. So
Now, if
basically,
people want to,
sorry,
yes,
can
go
I just
ahead.
quickly say this? What
Yeah,
we were doing with people is we were creating an expansion. And Heather, something I just would like to mention to people, very often what we are thinking and then we speak out belongs to somebody else, because we are transceivers and receivers and transceivers and receivers and transmitters. We get to take on other people's thoughts, and then we speak out what belongs to them, and we play with their story rather than our story, and that creates a history that we may wish to release.
oh, definitely. Definitely. I have started the practice of, when I feel myself, because there's a difference between choosing and reacting. When I feel reactions coming, I will pause if I can catch it and say, is that mine? Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's
What
not,
is this?
right? And if
Yeah.
people want to find you, where can they find you?
Sure. Well, my website is janinekathleen.com, and I'm on most social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. You can DM me there, and I would be delighted to answer any questions. Also, I have a private Facebook group where I do channel once a month for people, and I offer quite a lot of value there. To help people understand what their thoughts, words, and feelings are doing in their life and what they can do about it. If you'd like to
That's
work on
amazing.
me with me one-on-one, you can also reach out and we can book a half an hour. You can book a half an hour sounding board session so you can get an idea of where your speech patterns are, and we can explore working together from there. And that you can find at JanineKathleen.com. And after all, as everybody knows and everybody says, when you have a sounding board, you're able to hear yourself think while somebody holds space for you.
Right. I do my best thinking out loud,
Me
just
too.
talking. Right. Oh my gosh. Sometimes I'll say things and I'm like, wow, who said that?
That's beautiful. And to add on to that, if I may, that's one of the reasons I ask people to journal. Because, yes, you can hear yourself think. And very often when you see what you're thinking, it brings a very different understanding to, oh my goodness, did I think that? Did I say that in writing? Also, once you've spoken, you don't always can't use, very often will release what you've been saying from your consciousness. Whereas when it's on the paper, you understand what you're saying, the story you're
Right.
telling, it's there.
Yes. That's beautiful. And for all of the people who are trying to madly write down where to find you, it's in the show notes. Don't worry. It's all going to be there for you. And as always, I mean, I could talk to you on and on and on because we have so many things that we talk about. But to honor everyone's time, we're going to sign off for the moment. But before we go, do you have final words of wisdom for our friends out here?
Own your power, own your voice, and understand whose dream you are living.
That's outstanding. Take that, my friends, run with it, and then contact Janine and sound off.
Yes. Sound off and let's
Sound
hear you.
off. Thank you so much, my friend. It was so amazing to talk with you again. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Friends in podcast land, you have an amazing day as well. Take care, and we'll see you soon.